Hello class, my name is Gilbert Gallegos. I spent the better part of the week trying to think of a story to share with each of you that was easy for me to tell and it was on a personal level. And the story that I thought of to share with you was the birth of my fourth child. But before I get into that story, which all begins with a question, there's one thing that I also want to share with you, and that is after the birth of our third child, my wife and I decided we weren't going to have any more children. We had a few complications during the pregnancy, so we figured it was best that we didn't have any more children. So going back to the question, one night my wife and I are lying in bed and she tells me, hey, we need to talk. And of course, a million things go running through my mind. What could she want to talk about? And she asked me, what would you say if I asked you if you wanted to have another kid? And I was like, well, yeah, I'd say yes, because truth be told, I'd always wanted another child, but I never brought it up because I knew she didn't want to have another child, and based on our previous conversation. So right then we decided to have another child, and lucky for us, we got pregnant pretty quickly. And leading up to the birth, everything was normal. You had your doctor's visits, ultrasounds, finding out the sex of the baby, buying clothes, just everything that goes along with having a newborn child. So the day that my wife is ready to give birth, we go to the hospital at Eglin Air Force Base. We stop outside of the elevator by the labor and delivery sign, which we did for our previous son, and take a picture by the sign. We go upstairs, we get checked in, we meet our nurse, very nice lady, meet our doctor, and then we just sit and wait. My wife is starting to have some small contractions, and the nurse is coming in and checking it on her, and the process is going pretty slowly, and I know the nurse knows it's going slowly. And so they give her shot of Pitocin, and they give her a medicine ball to use to get the birth process going, So as time goes on, we know something isn't right, because every time she has a contraction, the baby's heart drops down. The baby's heart rate drops down. And all of a sudden, all these nurses and doctors come rushing in, and I knew something wasn't right because they were huddled up in the corner whispering. And the only thing that I heard out of that was, we need to get an OR room ready now for a C-section, for an emergency C-section. So before I know it, they whisk my wife away, they take her to the emergency room, and I'm just standing in the middle of the room not knowing what's going on. And I'm texting my parents and her parents, letting them know what's going on, and I have no clue. I've seen the C-section videos before. I don't recommend you watching them. It's actually pretty disgusting. So finally this nurse comes in, throws scrubs at me and says, put these on now, we want to go if you want to see the birth. So I put them on real quick, mask included. She grabs me by the arm, takes me to the emergency room, and my wife is already there, and there's already a doctor working on her, working on getting the baby out, and I'm standing right by her head just staring at her, and we're making eye contact, and I'm shaking like crazy, and she's like, are you okay? I'm like, well, I'm fine, I'm just really nervous, and I shake a lot when I get nervous. So finally my son is born, and they asked me if I want to see the baby, and I'm like, well, yeah, absolutely, I want to meet my son. So they pull me around the bed, around the shield that's between my wife and where all the doctors and nurses are working, and I see my son laying on the weigh table, and they're sucking his boogers out and cleaning out his mouth and cleaning him off. And the first thing I notice is his hands and feet are extremely purple. And I asked the doctor, hey, is this normal? I mean, it's freaking me out. And they're like, well, yeah, it's normal. He'll have normal color back, within a couple days or a few weeks, but it's nothing to worry about. So I'm like, okay, that makes me feel so much better. And so they asked me if I want to hold my baby, and I do. And I hold him and I take him around the shield so he can meet my wife, and I hold him down there, and they make eye contact, and they're like, okay, well, we need to continue to work on your wife. We're going to ask you to leave now. So me and the baby, we go out to the original room that we were in, and we're just sitting there waiting. All we have is a rocking chair to sit on. We're making eye contact, staring at each other. He's in his blanket, and he and I are having a conversation. All I kept thinking about was the question, and do you want to have another child? And even sitting there going through everything while in the operating room, my wife getting a C-section, the answer is still absolutely yes, because I can't think of anything better going on in my life right now than holding my son. And both of us are wondering, what's going on with mom? Where's she at? And finally, of course the nurses aren't telling me anything. So finally, the doctor wheels my wife back in on the bed, and I ask her if she's okay, and she said, yeah, I'm really fine. I just don't feel really good. My stomach hurts, which I completely understand. And she asked me if I was okay, and then made fun of me because of how bad I was shaking. And I was like, well, I was just really nervous, but I'm glad you're okay. And she's like, well, I'm really glad that you're okay. You're shaking worse than I was. So, my son ended up being absolutely fine. My wife had no further complications after the birth, and at the end of the day, we got to go home and just spend time with our son. And that is a short story that I wanted to share with each of you. Thank you for your time.